Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and I source cars for people on a professional basis. Although most of the cars I source are between £1,000 and £5,000, very often I've been asked to show something a little bit cheaper on the channel, and so I came up with No Budget Reviews, the series where we look at cars that you can buy in good condition with an MOT for under £1,000 and you can enjoy driving. We don't film this in an expensive manner, we don't use separate microphones, we don't use fluid head tripods, we don't even use a DSLR, but we do have a lot of fun. I don't know how to say this, viewers, but I am extremely excited once again. Yesterday I drove a pre-facelift Montego. You probably would have seen it on my channel already, and that car's already appeared as a walk around as well. But it's not just one person who has a collection of Montegos and Maestros in the country. We've got another collection here, and this is a Montego Countryman from 1991. It's a 2-litre manual. It's actually a carburettor one, which I didn't even realise they made this late, which is very interesting. The Estate Montego was launched, I think, late '84. This one's had a new rear bumper on it. There is some more work to be done to this particular one, and yes, in the background there is something very special that will be coming up on the channel as well. The Countryman decals should be on this car, but at some point they've actually been sort of removed. Tow bar is very typical of this kind of car. A lot of them were used for towing back in the day. Just like a lot of older cars in this country, the left-hand side of the car is the one that's going to have a bit of attention soon. But it is going to look even better than it does in the moment. These wheel trims are not quite correct for this car. They're off a Montego Clubman. But it looks like you can find tyres still relatively easily for these, which is good. It's not like a lot of older cars. I do like the look of these post-facelift Montegos. By this stage, the Austin name was not used, only on cars built up until October 1988. And you can see it looks like a Rover badge, but it isn't. It would appear, of course, in a Rover brochure, and a lot of the dealers would register them as Rover Montegos, but that was never actually their official name. They were just called a Montego, or in the case of the Maestro, just a Maestro. The Metros were debadged for a couple of years, and then they did take on the Rover name in 1990. So take a look inside first. There's actually quite a few differences on the interior of one of these in comparison to the pre-facelift car. First thing is this instrument binnacle, which is actually completely different. It's similar, but it's a little bit more like, I don't know, a sort of Rover 800 or possibly an R8, although the actual instruments are in the same places. Another thing that's changed as well is the position of these wiper switches, which are up here, and the heating ventilation controls, rather than being here, are actually now there, which is much, much better. A much better decision to do them like this. This one's got the Honda PG1 5-speed gearbox. Because it's only done 43,000 miles, the gearbox actually feels really nice. I'll just be sitting here sort of having a go with it. Also, the electric window switches, again, they're in a slightly better place. You don't have to reach down the bottom of the dash to operate them. They're actually here, which is a very common position for them to be in cars of this era and through to sort of mid-90s, really. Dashboard's a little bit crap, but then they all are. They all do that, sir. I'm not going to actually open this sunroof apart from maybe the cover. You know what I feel about, using some of these old cars, getting a bit wary about that. This has actually got a complete headlining in it, unlike the last one we tested. Obviously, again, it needs a little bit just of glue to just glue that up, but that's absolutely fine. This car is currently being used on an almost daily basis by Steve and Lucy, who own it. I like the little coin tray down here. This kind of reminds me of the millions and millions of Maestros that my grandfather used to have back in the day, and just these very famous wiper and indicator stalks with little sort of switches on them. They were used until about 1995 in the Rover Metros, and obviously in the Maestros and Montegos. We'll talk more about the history of the later Maestros when we do a walk around of that one. Just see what's in the ashtray here. Oh, that's quite big for all kinds of bits and pieces, and there's the little thing you put in there. The trim reminds me in here of the MG Maestro we did a walk around of, which would have been over at Summit Garage in Dudley back in May. It's a very similar type of interior trim, which again looks like an early Rover R8, and of course I've owned an early Rover R8 because it's on the channel. I had that in about sort of February, March 2020. Got some sun visors here, but you do not get a mirror on the driver's side, because I don't think they thought that ladies were going to be driving these, but a lot of ladies did. I remember a Countryman being owned by the mother of a friend of mine when I was at prep school. It's a green one, and this is why this car is really a little bit nostalgic for just even me, separately from the family, because these were owned by families who were also looking at things like a Volvo 240. Obviously this wasn't as expensive as a 240, but a little bit more affordable than that. But yes, you just don't see many of these around at all. Brilliant, the tailgate stays up on its own, fantastic. There is actually a seat in here. I'm going to have to probably kind of pause here and put it up, because it's going to be possible for me to film and do it with one hand. But I'll just show you the fact we've got seat belts in here. They're actually proper inertia rear ones as well, which is really good. And if you're, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, this is the place you want to be, in the back of the Montego 7-seater. You want to be in the back here and waving at traffic following you, which is what we used to do in my mother's old 240 estate that she had at the time. Notice the rear light lenses still have the Austin Rover logo on them, even though the company by this stage had been dead for about 3 years. Right, let's put the seat up. If we look here, the procedure for folding the rear seat is actually a bit more faff than I thought it was. You have to take the low blind completely out, and it's over there. I suppose you, don't know, you just leave that at home or something. And these buckles, that's interesting. If I just release this, you can see that they just fall straight into the floor. So actually folding up this cushion, having the buckles ready, is a bit of a design problem. Also, there's a little bit of Velcro on the back of this one to make it stick to the seat, but that doesn't work anymore. So yeah, that is a bit of a design flaw. Although what is good is that the people who'd be sitting in the back here would share the headrests of the people in the middle row, so actually that's a reasonably good idea. You could probably fit a bit of stuff under here. The spare wheel is just there. It's easier to access that with this bit sort of folded forwards, but it's not too bad. That's a full size one as well. Brilliant. I better put all this stuff back now, I suppose. Right, viewers, I'm predicting we've got lots of rear space in here, and I am absolutely right. If this was a GSI estate, or maybe one of the earlier Van den Plaats, then you'd actually get rear electric windows in here, but they're right down there. Obviously most of the estates just had manual windows. We've still got these ashtrays, which are from, you know, early 80s design of the car. That really sort of belies it. Headlining actually isn't too bad, and there's a sort of sculpting here which gives you huge amounts of headroom. There's loads of room in here. I can see exactly why a family looking for a car circa 1991 would want to buy a Countryman. It's nice and plushly trimmed in here. The seats are quite comfortable. They're very similar to the ones in an R8 as well. Yeah, you don't, for some reason, get a central armrest, which I think is a bit of a shame. But the driver's seat's actually got a lumbar support adjustment too. And just like on the Maestros, which is a feature that a lot of people really kind of do like them for, there's actually an adjustment depending on the height of the driver or passenger. Okay, let's take a look at the engine. So here we are, viewers, the famous O series engine, in this particular car developing 105 horsepower. This is the carburettor version. You can clearly see the carb just there. I didn't realise until today that they made the O series with a carburettor this late in 1991, but obviously by January 1993 all cars sold in the European Union, which we were obviously part of then, had to have catalytic converters fitted as standard. And so the easiest thing to do was to fit electronic fuel injection, which the Maestro actually also got. In the 1.3A series got that. But the Mayfair Montego that we looked at earlier, that has electronic fuel injection in it. So that has a bit more horsepower and I suppose a bit more reliable. This has an auto choke actually, but the auto choke seems a lot more reliable than most ones I've tried of the period. O series has still got a cast iron block, but that is I think an aluminium cylinder head. Reasonably easy to work on. Timing belt engine notes, obviously make sure you do that, and there is a power steering pump just there, so we haven't got really heavy steering like we did some of the 1.6 Maestros and Montegos. Alright, I think it's time to go for a little drive, viewers. Wow, viewers, what a treat. It's fantastic. We have got a bit of dashboard rattle going on. That's quite common for these, especially if they've got a lot of sun bleaching, which this car clearly must have. The clutch is a little bit heavy in this. Steering is very light though, and the gearbox, because this car's only done about 43,000 miles, is really tight. Honda PG1 gearboxes sometimes get a bit baggy, but this one is really good. Performance seems very good. About 105 horsepower in this car. If it was a fuel injection, it'd be a little bit more, it'd be about 115 horsepower. Other engines available in a Montego Estate. They skipped the A series in this. The base engine was the 1.6. Early with carburettor and I think later with fuel injection. That generated 85 horsepower. I don't think you could get a Montego Turbo Estate. If you could, that would have had about 150 horsepower. There was also an option for a forbidden fuel engine, but as usual, we don't talk about diesels on this channel. I spoke to Mr. Coleman, rubbish mechanic, quite recently, and said I was doing some Montegos, and he said he had a 2 litre like this one, and he banger raced it quite a while ago. I think it was an Estate, and he said it was really fast, and you know, for a family car from 30 years ago, this feels really nippy. Just to put that into fourth. There we go. That vibration that I've got will go away if I do that, and it's pulling quite nicely actually at about 30 miles an hour in fourth. Yeah, we've got a vibration harmony thing going on here. Steering with power assistance like this car has, it's very, very light, but it does feel nicely connected to the front wheels, the hydraulic setup, as you expect from a car of this age, way before electric power steering. It just feels a bit more refined than the Maestro. I think by this stage they'd had a bit more time to develop this car. The Maestro was notoriously underdeveloped when they launched it in '83. The Montego was launched about 18 months later in the state form, so a bit more time to sort of iron one or two things out. Yeah, it's very pleasant. You can actually see when I'm driving the heating and ventilation controls in this facelifted car. And obviously that's a big improvement on the pre-facelift ones, where they're just above the left knee and you just can't really see them. And the ventilation's working really well. I quite like this, viewers. I don't know why that's a surprise to anyone, but I quite like it. I'm amazed how sprightly this car feels. It has just had a carburettor rebuild. That probably explains a bit of it, but it feels fantastic. I've driven a Volvo 240 Estate before, about the same age. I think it was an 89. And, you know, that's the car that we had for years in my family, but I quite like this. The only problem is this terrible rattle of 30 miles an hour in third gear, which must be something to do with vibration. But if I slow down a little bit, it gets a bit better, but there's probably some component inside this dash which is just harmonising with that exact vibration. But it's brilliant. The glass area on this car is huge. You can see everything. You can see behind you and in front of you. Obviously, in front of me at the moment is my mount, because there's no budget reviews, and that's what happens. But I'm finding myself just extremely happy with one of these. I mean, you can still pick up Montegos for under £1,000, not necessarily Countrymans. They seem to be in a bit more demand. I mean, I think really, if it were me, I'd want an EFI GSI Estate. They're very, very, very rare, extremely rare. But I like a bit of wood and leather. This has got the wood, but I would just need, maybe if I could put a GSI interior into a car like this, that'll be good. But yeah, I have driven 2 Montegos within the last 24 hours, and I just think they're brilliant cars. I mean, they're not the best cars ever made, and I'm not going to make a claim like that, but I can see why Steve and Lucy have had so many Montegos and Maestros. It's just fantastic. I've even finding this driving position relatively good for a car of this age. Often they're not, but this is pretty comfortable. I just have to adjust the seat slightly and even you know, have a little go of a lumbar support. But yeah, it's really good. Right, I suppose we're going to have to go back and draw some conclusions about the Montego Estate. Well, viewers, the Montego 2-litre Countryman Estate. Is this a car that you should consider with your hard-earned budget of up to £1,000? Well, if you can live with literally 1 or 2 squeaks and rattles, this isn't the first Montego I've had that had a dashboard that did a bit of that, and you can find one that isn't completely rusted away and has been looked after, then why not? There was a reason why these cars were so popular back in the early 90s in particular, with the Countrymans. They were quite desirable actually for a time. I think this is quite an easy car to drive. The engine's nice and torquey and tractable. This gearbox is really nice. The controls are nice and simple in here. The visibility is really good. Maintenance isn't difficult. I mean, you might find it difficult to get some of the panels of this car and interior bits, but yes, I didn't think I'd be averse to this car, and of course I'm not. Maybe I'm biased, but there we go. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed for watching this episode of No Budget Reviews. Thank you obviously to Steve and Lucy for allowing me to film this car today. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more Montego and Maestro content. I've got a little hint that you've probably seen in the video of a little little upcoming feature we're doing. Anyway, do switch on notifications to be informed when new videos come live. It really does help us out. And thank you ever so much indeed once again.